Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing good. So today we're going to be talking about Season 3 of Invincible, specifically the War of the Invincibles. Now, this is the most chaotic event in the saga, and there are going to be spoilers ahead. I know the TV show is ongoing right now, so if you don't like spoilers, go ahead and click off this video. But if you do want to know what happens and you do want to know the differences between the comic and the TV show, this is the video for you. So we've definitely noted some changes in the TV show. It's nothing game-changing, nothing that alters the plot, but we are going to be noticing them as I go over the comic. And yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So basically 1 month after the events of the second season finale, we find ourselves in the midst of the Invincible War. Now, this is the most chaotic event in the saga, like I mentioned before. Evil versions of Mark are roaming the world with the sole purpose of tarnishing the reputation of Mark Grayson himself. These alternate Invincibles are led by none other than the sadistic Armstrong Levy, who, as it turns out, wasn't really dead. He was in hiding, and the brutal blows Mark delivered during the second season only served to push the villain further. While the damage Mark inflicted was certainly lethal, Angstrom used his last remnants of life to open a portal to the dimension of the Technicians, the same beings who enhanced his physical abilities in the past. So the injuries to Angstrom's body were so severe that only the advanced technology of the Technicians could save him. As the Technicians observed, a dying hand reached through the portal, and they didn't hesitate to aid him, as his ability to travel across dimensions was invaluable to them. In this dimension, through technology, 3 individuals achieved total control over humanity, ruling under a regime that bases its decisions on technical criteria to ensure efficiency and progress. It didn't take the Technicians more than a week to reverse Angstrom's injuries, and true to their culture, they also enhanced his body with technology. Specifically, implants that allow him to control powerful orbs. Now, these orbs serve a dual purpose. First, to inspect other dimensions without exposing Angstrom to danger, and second, for warfare. Each orb possesses the strength and tools necessary to neutralize opponents, even Viltrumites, and with this new technology, Angstrom spent the following days traversing the multiverse, preparing his ultimate revenge against Mark Grayson. According to Angstrom, for his revenge to succeed, he must show the world how cruel, ruthless, and evil Mark Grayson truly is. To achieve this, Angstrom recruited the worst versions of Mark to visit Earth and caused so much destruction that it would tarnish Mark's image for the rest of his days. This plan makes it even clearer that Levy is a despicable being, enjoying control over his victims and the harm he can inflict, even if it means taking the lives of millions. In the comic issue, we see the original dimension being assaulted by the evil versions of Invincible, and Angstrom, blinded by rage but ecstatic with vengeance, orders the alternate Marks to spread across the world, destroying everything in their path. Angstrom promises the Invincibles that if they fulfill their part of the deal, he will grant them whatever they desire. Meanwhile, the 3 Technicians watch from afar as the madman initiates his attack. Mark and Adam Eve are at Eve's house, where Mark has just officially met her parents, and this tender moment is interrupted by Cecil's expected call. By this point, the alternate Marks are already causing massive destruction in major cities around the globe. The eccentric-haired Mark attacks a prison, the yellow-gloved Mark attacks London, and the deformed Mark attacks Russia. The latter gives us an idea of how twisted these versions are, as he mentions being imprisoned by his father for a year. Imagine how bad you have to be for Nolan to consider locking you up. However, many cities are protected by heroes from Image Comics, and in the next panel we see the mythical appearance of Spawn, the cursed vigilante, defending Los Angeles against one of the most powerful versions of Mark, known as the Viltrumite without a mustache. Something we'll never see in the original series. This version not only holds his own against the legendary anti-hero, but also surprises us by mentioning that he's already defeated Spawn in his dimension and can do it again. So the reason Spawn won't appear in the episode is because his production company is Image Comics, And unlike Marvel or DC, Image Comics doesn't own its characters. The rights are held by their respective creators. So for example, the rights to Invincible belong to Robert Kirkman. The only way to include Spawn in the adaptation is if Prime Video convinces Todd McFarlane to allow a cameo without demanding a hefty payment, especially since Tech Jacket and Brit must be included in the adaptation, which would require additional payments for their rights. My best guess is that Prime Video won't include Spawn in the event. Leaving Spawn's sporadic appearance aside, the first line of defense against the Invincibles is represented by Spawn, Doomcat, and Tech Jacket, with the latter being the only one to defeat his opponent. In fact, as seen in his story, Tech Jacket is the only one to defeat two versions of Mark simultaneously. The second line of defense is represented by the original Mark, who, unaware of what's happening, faces one of his alternate versions. The two exchange blows, but it doesn't take long for the results to show, as Mark, driven by anger, easily neutralizes this version, which is perhaps the weakest of them all. Here, Mark observes Angstrom's first orb. However, before he can clarify the situation, he is attacked by the superheroes from Capes, one of the many comics created by Robert Kirkman. They pummel him from side to side while Wolfman tries to ensure no villain escapes from prison. By this point, the news is already broadcasting information about the events, showing all of Mark's loved ones reacting to the situation. On the left side, we see Oliver's nanny and Debbie, while on the right side, we see Amber with her new partner and Mark's best friend, William. For them, it's an emotional roller coaster. As close as they are to Mark, they can't help but believe he's gone mad like his father and is causing all this destruction willingly. This is where we realize how cunning Angstrom Levy's mind is. The villain attacks Mark where it hurts the most, his Viltrumite identity. However, he doesn't stop there. He also seeks to harm Mark's loved ones. Adam Eve is brutally intercepted by one of the alternate versions, and a particularly dangerous one who announces that this time he will take Eve's life slowly to savor it even more. Meanwhile, Oliver proves to be a son worthy of Nolan Grayson's legacy as he holds his own against the hooded version of his brother, who visited the house to end Debbie's life. The original Mark manages to clarify things with Cape's heroes, and together they set out to find another version of Mark. By the night of the first day, the Pentagon is also attacked by one of the alternate Marks. The story shows the alliance between Cecil, Britt, and Donald is strong enough to kill a Mark. Now, we do know this encounter will be very lethal, as it will be the first time we see Donald completely separated from his torso, as well as the appearance of the legendary Brit, the indestructible hero. This concludes the first day of the War of the Invincibles. By this point, 3 of the Invincibles have been defeated, while Earth's forces have only lost Tech Jacket, who is alive but too weak to continue fighting. And unfortunately, the war is just beginning, as the second day of battle sees increased casualties on both sides, with most heroes being defeated and many losing their lives. With multiple versions of Mark still loose around the world, Cecil has no choice but to call in the heroes from Image Comics, including groups like Youngblood, Capes, and Cyberforce. From the Pentagon, Cecil assigns their battles and proves the necessary support to balance the fights, which is complicated because despite all being alternate versions of Mark, their power level varies significantly. Meanwhile, Mark manages to reach Adam Eve, where we realize she survived her previous encounter. Mark takes her hand, and together they fly to the next battle. Here, Mark expresses guilt over what's happening, and each of these versions, in some way, are a reflection of him. However, there's no time to process these events, as the couple soon finds their next opponent, the least memorable Mark, who is fighting against a group of heroes known as Cyberforce, a comic launched in the 1990s. While they don't have enough power to face him alone, with the support of Eve and Mark, they form a solid team. This version of Mark proves to be quite powerful, as despite being outnumbered, he fatally wounds Eve before being neutralized. The situation is so dire that Mark panics and forgets all about the War of the Invincibles. His top priority becomes finding a hospital to save Eve's life. Unfortunately, she loses too much blood during the journey, and despite the doctors starting transfusions, she falls into a coma. Mark, unable to leave the love of his life in such a vulnerable state, refuses to leave the hospital and leaves the Image comic heroes to save Earth. The Image comic heroes seem to be holding their own, as the physical power of this heroine adds the fifth casualty to the Invincibles ranks, while Savage Dragon does everything in his power to neutralize another version. The Image Comics heroes manage to sustain their battles and, in many cases, end the lives of the Invincibles. By the morning of the second day of combat, these heroes have taken down 7 Invincibles in total, which is no small feat, as it gives us an idea of the power of these versions. For example, all of Cecil's Guardians of the Globe were defeated by a single version. Immortal's head is used to pierce the last copy of his beloved, and it's Darwin II who is forced to star in his canonical event. Batman's disciple saves his companions by sending this version into the Shadow Realm. Meanwhile, the humble headquarters of the Teen Team is also visited by one of the other versions. Robot, Rex, Bulletproof, and Amanda are overwhelmed by the extraordinary strength of the Viltrumite. Monster Girl, who is perhaps their most powerful member, lies unconscious on the cold floor, and Robot tries to ensure she's still alive. However, the ruthless Mark is already prepared to send them to their deaths. Bulletproof does everything possible to stop the Viltrumite, but Rex, seeing no scenario where everyone survives, desperately orders Bulletproof to use his powers to get the others out of there, as he will handle the situation. Rex, once a jerk, has become a man who resolves things. Mark, hearing these words, is deeply offended and, true to his Viltrumite nature, grabs Rex by the neck, confidently stating that once he's done with him, he'll fly to where his friends are to make his ridiculous sacrifice meaningless. This cruel version of Mark knows Rex's powers well and knows that he has no more objects to explode to harm him. When the alternate Invincible asks Rex what he will explode next, Rex responds with his last words, "My own skeleton." He then triggers an explosion so powerful that it obliterates everything around him, including the alternate Mark Grayson. Under this scenario, Cecil Stedman visits Mark in the hospital to ask him to join the Resistance. Cecil tells Mark that he can't stay there, but Mark, with tears streaming down his face, responds that he can't leave. Eve needs him. For the first time in Invincible's history, Mark prioritizes his personal life over his hero identity. Cecil insists, telling him that the world is losing and needs his help. But Mark remains firm in his refusal, stating that all world's heroes are fighting for him and they can win without his help. These words mark the beginning of Mark's new identity, as he decides to be a hero for himself. Cecil leaves the hospital, grumbling, telling Mark he hopes he's right. At this point, the situation is extremely critical. All the Image comic heroes are out of commission. We see the team of Youngblood alongside Savage Dragon defeating the German version of Mark, identifiable by his distinctive mustache. We also see a Mark dressed in Bulletproof's attire deciding to visit the White Room of the Pentagon, where he's sent to his death by the reanimin of Sinclair. This Mark is the Mark of bad decisions, as this suit is the first one Art, the tailor of the heroes, offered Mark during the first season. This version accepted the suit and now, ironically, makes the bad decision to go to the most fortified place on the planet. We also see the eccentric-haired Mark, previously defeated by Invincible, waking up and continuing to wreak havoc across the globe. A counter-argument to Invincible's inaction is that it's also a decision with consequences. Previously, Mark had the opportunity to send this Mark to his death, and now many humans are losing their lives due to the young hero's decisions. By this point, California is completely destroyed. The day ends with the 12th Mark being killed by Zyra herself, while Savage Dragon witnesses the massive destruction caused by the Invincibles. While the planet's defenses have neutralized 12 Invincibles, there are still 8 more alive and in perfect condition to continue destroying the planet. The third day of the War of the Invincibles begins with the 8 remaining versions standing over the world's major cities: Los Angeles, New York, London, Paris, Moscow, Tokyo, and Sydney. And they've been ravaged by the power of the Viltrumites. The world has witnessed the danger Mark Grayson represents. For this reason, Angstrom Levy declares the first phase of the War of the Invincibles over. Levy orders all Marks to gather at Debbie's house to continue his diabolical plans. The 8 Marks discuss the memories the place brings them, but they don't realize that they're being surrounded by Angstrom's orbs. Once the villain has everything prepared, he enters the original dimension, telling the Marks that the next phase of the plan is to bring Mark Grayson to them so they can disfigure his body and make him experience the same pain Angstrom endured. For the Invincibles, this makes no sense, as they were recruited with the promise of expanding their empire across countless dimensions. The Cannibal Mark leads the complaints and threatens Angstrom with death if he doesn't start fulfilling his promises immediately. Without a word, Angstrom uses his orbs to push the 8 Marks into the same dimension Mark wandered in at the end of the second season. We already know that dimension lacks any resources to return to the original dimension. It's a lethal trap where the 8 Invincibles are now stuck in. The Cannibal Mark takes the situation the worst, continuing to scream and threaten Levy, swearing he'll send him to his death for what he's done. Angstrom considers the matter closed as he leaves his former allies trapped for the rest of their existence. This marks the last participation of the Invincibles in the War of the Invincibles. However, their story continues years later when Mark is sent to this dimension, and we discover that the War of the Invincibles has become the Society of the Snow, where the strongest survive. Here, we realize that the yellow and black suited Mark, known as Cannibal Mark by the Invincible fandom, has completely lost his mind and has started feeding on the resources of his fellow Marks. However, this is a topic for another video. Returning to the War of the Invincibles, once Angstrom sends the 8 Marks to the dystopian planet, he's surprised to find that the original Mark has come to his home to defend it. From here, the second direct confrontation between Angstrom and Mark begins, with a finale that has repercussions throughout the whole Invincible saga. Angstrom is confident in his superiority over Mark, believing all versions of Mark are equally cruel, violent, and unintelligent. The villain uses his orbs to neutralize the young hero, which also affects Mark's companions. Oliver and Bulletproof are neutralized by the technology. However, Invincible's determination surpasses the villain's games. For Mark, this isn't a heroic battle or a fight for humanity's sake. It's a personal conflict between 2 men with significant differences. Mark easily dodges the orbs and charges the villain with all his strength, making his intentions clear. Mark states that what he's about to do is to make Angstrom pay for the harm he's caused Adam Eve. In other words, Mark's motivation is revenge. Now, this battle is far from easy. Mark, filled with hatred, questions Levy on how he survived their previous encounter, to which the villain responds, "Because I'm brilliant." For Angstrom, the fight is just another one of his demented games. Confidently, he uses his orbs to separate the hero from his body. And he explains that after the tragic explosion, he visited the other dimension to repair his body. The difference now is that he's prepared to avoid repeating past mistakes. Sending Mark to other dimensions during the first encounter only allowed the young hero to find a way to defeat him. Now, Angstrom is determined to end Mark early using the weapons the technicians incorporated into his body. While Mark is hit by some orbs, he's no longer the same teenager Levy faced before. This Mark is full of determination and willing to do whatever it takes to protect the ones he loves. Mark is no longer a hero, he's a man taking control to protect his own interests. Invincible is a self-written poem, as Mark uses that determination to take control of one of the orbs and destroy it with ease, a gesture that foreshadows the end of the conflict. So, do you guys think that Angstrom deserves to be sent to his death? Invincible is very clear on this. The young hero is so fast that the next thing the villain sees is Mark grabbing him by the neck without warning. Face to face, Mark Grayson, in his most violent version, condemns all death and destruction Angstrom has caused. Thousands of lives were lost to ruin Mark's reputation. A total waste and injustice that Invincible won't let go unpunished. However, Mark hears Oliver's voice calling for the villain's execution. Instead of obeying, Mark takes a moment to process what's about to happen. Since Angstrom's supposed death, Mark changed his suit to black and blue as a symbol that he would never again take the life of an enemy. If Mark were to kill Levi, it would be his first kill. Oliver, an extremely capable child due to his Viltrumite genes, understands the scenario perfectly. There's no greater proof that Levi must be executed than reality itself. If Mark had ended the villain during their first encounter, thousands of lives would have been saved. Oliver's argument is irrefutable, so Mark prepares to carry out the sentence. He apologizes to his nemesis and announces that he's left him no choice. Unfortunately, Mark's hesitation gives the villain the time and space needed to free himself from Mark's control using his orbs. At the same time the villain sets up a portal to the dimension of the technicians, Mark demonstrates incredible speed because he is capable of returning and grabbing Angstrom by the arm before it's too late. If Levi manages to stay in that dimension, it means that Mark's family and loved ones will always be in danger. Mark pulls with all his strength, and despite managing to get his arm through the portal, it closes before his body can follow. Once Angstrom closes the portal, he quickly orders the technicians to execute a new plan. They will go after the 8 versions of Invincible trapped in the dystopian Earth and use them to finish off Mark. They will all strike at the same time, taking advantage of the fact that Earth no longer has any resistance. For this, Angstrom needs the technicians to repair his body and technology. However, to Levi's bitterness, the technicians are not on the same page. Fortunately for Earth, these strange beings respond to Levi's order with a firm no. They grew tired of the foolish games of Angstrom, and just like the cannibal Invincible, the technicians announced to the villain that it's time to pay his promises. These beings do not give second chances to anyone, and it's for that reason they proceed to announce to the villain that he is now just another worker for the technocracy. And just like that, the Invincible War is over, guys. It was pretty insane, and I'm really excited to see this in the TV show, see if they make any changes or how exactly they're gonna go about it. And just to give you guys a little bit more, after the Invincible War, Mark is, cleaning up the city. The casualties are basically up to 1 million, so he's very, very upset. And just at that moment, guess who appears? Conquest. Now, Conquest is a very, very strong Viltrumite. We're probably going to see him at the end of the season. It's going to be an epic fight. I've already gone through this fight in one of my videos, and I'm going to go ahead and drop the link in the description. So if you guys want to see that, go ahead. And yeah, that's basically it. Thank you so much for watching. And this is my first time not using an AI voice, so let me know if that worked out. And yeah, you guys have a great day. Peace.